looking at in a formal way. I will also like to announce that we shall be having a CAT next week on Saturday. Is that okay with us? Remember, we are going to be having like 3 weeks break from the teaching because of the current exams, which are going to be done, the specials and the supplementary exam. And that fairly means that we won't be able to have the classes for from 6th of next month all the way to 18th of next month. So during this time, I would like us to be able to do our CAT on, sorry, I would like us to do a CAT on, that is on Saturday. Yes. So I would like us to have a CAT on Saturday next week. That CAT will be taking a small percentage of the coursework. The other portion of the, the other portion of the coursework will be on the project. I do remember that we said that we shall be having a project. That's something I do remember. But I remember I said that we shall be having a small portion of the CAT, I think 5% being taken by the coursework, if I'm not wrong. But I stand to be corrected. So Mick, yes, I know I talked about the issue of the project, but we never said that the project will be able to take the 100% the coursework. We said either 5% of that coursework we will be able to do a sitting CAT. But all I'm saying, I stand to be corrected whether I'm right or wrong. But let's just have a simple CAT on next week on Saturday to jog our mind. It's always good to know whether what we are learning is something we are able to comprehend. Because at the end of the day, it's okay if we never agreed on the CAT, have no problem, but also make sure then we do the project. So if we never agreed on the CAT, then there's no problem. Maybe the only thing I can be able to introduce would be the random assessment test. No problem. We don't need to do the CAT next week, but we shall be having some random assessment test for this unit. So I think we can proceed with what we have for the day. Sorry, I was not able to do the slide for the lesson, but we can just proceed. Sorry. So today we will look at the programming web applications with the active server pages running on top of the .NET framework. This is fairly what we have been doing from day number 1, but we are trying to do this in a much formal way, whereby we are able to understand the different components and at what point do we use these components. So the chapter objectives are very straightforward. Number 1, we want to demonstrate whether the learners can be able to understand the active server pages .NET framework and Visual Studio. The Visual Studio is the integrated development environment we are using. I also want us to understand very well the idea of the master page in ASP.NET. Sorry. Then by the end of this chapter, we should also be able to create very basic web pages using the ASP.NET. And actually, that's what we have been doing from the first lesson. But I want us to be able to see in a more practical way or in a more theoretical way, what is all, when we have, sorry, once we have the master page, what are the implications of the master page? What other components can you have on the master page? How do you use a master page when you are creating your web applications? So just to begin, we do have 2 ways through which we can be able to attach our C# code, or 2 ways through which we can be able to have our pages, or we can be able to allow coding to be used in conjunction with the active server pages. Remember, the ASP pages, it's what you have. For example, if I'm going to be doing my web application using HTML, CSS, and PHP. If I'm using PHP, CSS, and HTML, I'll be able to design the layout. I'm going to design the page, all the content using HTML, and I'll also use CSS to control the look and feel of the web application. If you are doing your application using the active server pages, then for me to display the content, I'm going to be using the active server page. But now you have to do some server-side scripting code. Like, let's say if I'm using the PHP, the code will be written using PHP. But if I'm using the active server pages, I'll not be able to use PHP. I'm going to be using either C# or let's say something like Visual Basic running on top of the .NET framework. But there are two ways you can be able, there are two ways you can be able to embed, or you can be able to have your code in active server pages. Number one, you can have a separate page, and you'll notice that the project you have been creating for each page, we always have the .cs file. So we have one file which defines the layout of the page. Then we do have another page whereby you are going to be writing your code. Or number two, you can also be able to write your code, or the active server, you can also be able to write your C# code within the active server page. Just like when you are going to be writing your codes in PHP, you can be able to have the PHP within your HTML elements. So in active server pages, you can also be able to write your C# code, or you can also be able to write your Visual Basic code within the ASP.NET controls. So it's either you to choose which one is much better. But in programming, it's always a good practice that the content and the logic are separated. That means the active server page, the content should be on a separate page, and the C# code or the logic that will be manipulating the content will also be on a separate page. That one will give you a much cleaner code. That one will be able to give you a code you can be able to trace in case you have a problem within your program. Instead of having the ASP code, the ASP content together with the C# code together. So it's always good that you do separate the code and the content. And that's where we are seeing there are either two options. You can either have the ASP code and the code together, or you can be able to separate them in a separate file. And that's, we have all what we have been doing from day number one. We have been separating the ASPX with the .cs file, because the .cs file will be containing the C# code. Just a minute. So there are two ways to navigate through the code. Either you can press the F7. Once you press the F7, you will be able to go to the code for that particular file, or you can just open the file with the .cs extension from the Solution Explorer. I think this is something we have been doing over and over again. We have been using the option number 2, whereby I open the file. Once I open the file, I navigate to the .cs file, or the extension of that file from the Solution Explorer. Then I'm able to open the code and maybe start doing my coding or modifying my code. But you can also be able to use the F7 key from the keyboard to be able to open the code window where you have been able to write the codes for that particular page. So the pages in ASP.NET, we always call them the web pages. When you're going to be writing your code, always ensure that there's always a checkbox which is written, place the code in a separate file. It's actually a checkbox. Ensure that that checkbox has been selected. Just a minute. Martin. Okay, sorry for the disruption. I think we can just proceed. So when you're going to be creating your web form, what I've said, make sure that you check this, or you check this particular checkbox. There's always a checkbox written, place the code in a separate file. Once you check on that option, the ASP form and the code will be in a separate form, or will be in a separate file. And the beauty with that, we are able to have a clean code. You are able to trace your code from, or you are able to trace, if let's say your program has a problem, it's much better tracing all. It will become much simpler for you to trace the code when you are using this approach whereby the form and the code are in a separate file. Don't mix up the logic and the presentation. It's not always a good approach when you're creating application. And this one should also apply to the other ASP.NET elements. This one will include the master page. It's possible for you, for example, to be able to create the master page, but on the master page, maybe you want to do some kind of a code. You might also want maybe to do your own controls, or you might want to design your own custom controls in Visual Studio. If that's going to be the case, make sure that the controls and the code are in separate file, and that one will make your code to become much cleaner from your side. So if you have been very careful on the file we have been generating, every page will always have one form tag. So we cannot be able to have one form tag in an entire page, and that form tag will be used, or will be used to send information back to the server. Remember, the information we are going to be filling on the form, that information needs to go somewhere, or need to be submitted somewhere. And for us to be able to submit that information in the server, and in this case will be our database server, then we need the form tag. But we are saying we can only be able to have one form tag in an entire page. So you cannot be able to have more than one form. I don't know whether that's the case for PHP, but for active server pages, we shall only be having one form. If you are also being very careful, this is how we are defining the form. So the form will have the ID, and that ID is supposed to uniquely identify that form. Each form should have a unique name. For example, we do have this piece of code, form ID, then we give it the form1. That means if I want to be able to access that form, I can be able to use this programming name, form1. Then form1 dot the property I want to access, form1 dot the method I want to access. Then we also have another attribute we call the run at. Since the data on the form will be executed on the server or will be submitted on the server, we also need to include these two. The run at server and the ID are always mandatory for any ASP.NET controls. There's also something you also need to know, that all the ASP.NET controls will have the prefix, the ASP, then a full colon, the name of the control. So if at all this form it belongs to, if this is an ASP.NET form, then we shall have ASP full colon, then form, to tell the server that this is an ASP.NET control. And all the ASP.NET controls, the fact that they'll be executed on the server, they always have to have the run at server attributes. And they also have to have a unique ID. This ID will be the name you shall be using when you start maybe coding your program. So if you want to make, or if you want to reference this form, then I'm going to be using this ID, form1. Then I can now be able to say, for example, form1 dot something, or form1 will do this. Anytime you miss these attributes, then an error will be generated and your program may not be able to run as intended. So make sure that when you are creating your application, when you are adding your ASP.NET controls, that these two controls are there, the ASP, the ID, and the run at server. If you just omit one of them, then the compiler will give you an error when you are executing your program, because it's not able to note that this is an ASP.NET control. So let's look at the idea behind the master page. It's something we have been working on, but let's just do it in an official way. The master page will allow us to be able to contain the design and the layout of the whole website. In most other programming languages, if I'm doing a web application, I have to define the layout of every page. But you might find out that the layout of the pages will be all uniform from the first page to the last page. So instead of keeping on defining the layout from page 1 to page 2, page 3, and the last one, .NET has brought in the idea of the master page. So you define your layout on a single page, then all the other pages are able to inherit that page. And that means the other pages will be able to inherit the layout from the master page. And some sections on the master page will not be editable. That means you cannot be able to change some sections on the master page when you inherit that page. So we are also saying that this master page will also be inherited by other pages and will not be considered viewable on its own right. What that statement means, you cannot be able to run a master page. So if, let's say, you try to run a master page, the compiler or the environment will not allow you to do that, because the master page will not be, or cannot be viewed on its own. We cannot be able to view the master page on another page that has been able to inherit the master page. So for us to be able to view the master page, then that master page has to be inherited by another web form, and that web form will always have the extension of the ASPX page. And I think this is something we have been doing. We did a demo.master page, and after we did that, we are able to inherit that web page in another page in the exercise we have been doing. So you cannot be able to view the master page on its own. That's all what that statement is about. So to control the other pages, what we are calling the child page, this a control we call the content placeholder. I think this is something we also saw last week. So that content placeholder will allow us to be able to add our custom content on the other on the other inherited pages. Because once you inherit the master page will be able to define for you some sections on your website. But on that particular page, you might be able to maybe to add some content that will be specific to that particular page that's inheriting the master page. And that can only be done by having what we call a content placeholder on the master page. So the content placeholder, as we are saying, will be used to display the additional content contained all that will not be contained with the master page. So this content placeholder will allow us to be able to display content that will be specific to the page that's inheriting the master page. And the inherited page will contain the contents or the layout from the master page, plus whatever we have on the content placeholder, which we have been able to place on the additional or on the inherited page. The master page will also allow areas of the website that can only be changed by altering the master page and section of the website that are only specific to individual pages. I want to explain that further, that if, let's say, I have defined on my master page, let's say I have the header, the footer, and navigation, and that one maybe applies to the master page. Then I inherit that page on another page, for example, let's say the login page. But I want to make a change, maybe to the navigation. I'm not able to make that change from the login page. I have to go back to the master and be able to make that change. So the master page will give you that control so that you can be able to have on one page that will be controlling the look and feel of the other pages. If I have to make a change, that change will only be done on that particular specific page. You cannot be able to do it on the other pages. But on the other pages, which have been able to inherit the master, then we can now be able to add some specific content for that particular page, in addition to what has been inherited. I hope, class, this is clear before we proceed. The idea of the master page. Is it clear before we move on? Class, is the idea of the master page clear before we move on? Okay, then we proceed. Because I think I've been getting some students asking me about the issue of the master page. So I think now it's much clear what the master page will be able to do and at what point we can be able to use the master page. Yes, Raphael, kindly ask the question very fast. So which controls are you talking about, Raphael? I think we can use the microphone. The microphones are enabled. If possible, let's use the microphone.
When you talk about controls,
yes,
what are they? Are they tags? Because
yes,
the form tag,
yes,
which is also
okay.
a control.
Yes.
Then content placeholder is also a control.
Yes. Okay, I get the question. So the control will be those elements that define the content. Like, let's say I'm doing an HTML form. On the HTML, I can place a label. I can place, for example, a text area. I can be able to place the radio. In .NET, all in web applications, all in the ASP.NET, we don't call them the input controls, but we actually call them the controls. So those particular elements we are using to define how the layout or how the web page will look like, it's what we are calling the controls. Actually, the controls will allow us to be able to define how all the user interface of your web application. Raphael, have I answered the question to your satisfaction before we move on?
Yeah, it's a bit clearer now.
Okay, welcome. So let me pick the one for Felix. If, for example, you want to include the footer and the navigation in another page, how can you link them? If you want to include the footer and the navigation in another page. Okay, Felix, I'm not getting this question right. because all what you're saying, the master page, it's where we define our content. If there are some common sections that apply to our web application, then we do define them on the master page. So I define the footer, I define the header, I define the navigation, I define where the content shall be, and so on and so on. Once I just edit the master, then those contents will just appear in the other pages. I don't know what you mean by linking them, Felix. If maybe you can be able to use the microphone, maybe you can just voice the concern so that I get the question right. Okay, if it's clear, then we can proceed. Any other question regarding the master page? Okay, let's proceed. So we look at the style sheet. So the style sheet, just like normal web programming, will be able to define the look and feel of your web application. And we can be able to attach the style sheet in your master page. It's not a must for us to just attach the style sheet on the master page. You can also be able to attach them on other pages. But there are two ways for us to attach the style sheet. Number one, when the master page is currently on the source view, then we can be able to select the style sheet in the Solution Explorer. Without writing any piece of code, we just drag and drop it on the head section. That's one thing. So once you just click and drag it on the head section, then a code will be generated for you automatically in this manner. Link, then the name of the style sheet. The name of the style sheet in this case is stylesheet.css. Then all the other codes will be available for you. Actually, you don't need to know how to link the CSS. You can just drag and drop it on the page, and you'll be able to see that it's going to appear within your web. All the style you have been able to define within your style will be applied to that page. Maybe we can just do an example as we proceed. So that's one way we can be able to insert our CSS. Remember, if I'm going to be using PHP, I have to do the code myself. If I'm using pure HTML and CSS, then I have to do this code myself from scratch. But if I'm going to be using the ASP, the active server pages, then I can just drag and drop. Then the code will be automatically generated by that environment to be able to link that master page with that particular style sheet. The other option, we can be able to add this CSS. Number one, when the master page is in the design view, then you can be able to select the style sheet from the Solution Explorer. Then you drag it on the page. And by doing that, you are going to be able to create the link or the link tag in the head section of your HTML code. I think if you want to be able to learn more on CSS, you can just go to the w3schools.com/CSS, then do more on CSS. But this unit is not about cascading style sheet. The unit is all about the active server pages. But generally, that's how you can be able to link. You don't need to write the code from scratch. You can just drag and drop, then the code will be inserted within your web application. So I think maybe as we keep going along, we'll maybe look at these different styles, because maybe someone could be asking, do I need to have all this knowledge of maybe web programming before I can be able to do the unit? Yes, fairly you need some introduction skills on web programming, and that's why this unit is coming in that year, not in first year. At this time, you have already done the web development. You have also done the introduction to web development. But it doesn't mean that we are doing a web development course. What is the most important thing for us is we are doing the .NET programming, but we have to choose a certain programming language we have to choose a certain front which we are going to be taking. Either you can do the web applications, you can do the mobile applications. And I gave the reason why I decided to abandon the mobile applications, because the Windows Phone is becoming very obsolete. You can also be able to do the Windows Forms, which are also becoming fairly obsolete in the market, and many other kind of applications. So please don't look at it like we are doing web applications, but look at we are doing .NET programming, and we are actually using a certain programming language we are calling C#. My main emphasis will be on C#, not on the web part. So as we have said, so we look at the content holder. So we have been able, if you look at very clearly on the master page, then so the way .NET have been able to design the master page, it's not always a very good idea for people or for designers to keep on changing the layout whenever maybe the page is going to be inherited. The reason being, the master page is supposed to be controlling how the other page look like. So we don't want a case whereby you inherit the master page, but after inheriting the master page, you also make some changes in the child page. That one should not be happening. So the active server page in Visual Studio has been able to give us what we call the content placeholder. The content placeholder will be a control that will allow us to be able to place custom information or custom content on the web pages we are going to be inheriting together with the master page. So once you inherit the master page, there's going to be one content placeholder that you can be able to use to place your content. So for us to allow each of that page to have its own content, then there's something we call the content holder that will be used. And we must always have at least one being included in the master page, so that we can be able to allow any other page that will be inheriting the content from the master page to display their own specific information. Otherwise, if you don't have the content placeholder being defined within the master page, then what's going to happen will be a case whereby once you inherit a certain page, that page cannot be able to add its own specific information. And therefore, it beats the logic of having the master page relationship and also the pages we are inheriting. So every time we are going to be having the master page, we need to be able to define this active server page control, which we are calling the content placeholder. That will allow us to be able, or that will allow any particular page that inherits the master page to be able to add their own specific information. And that information will be what's going now to be displayed in conjunction with the content in the master page. I think I have had, sorry. As a goal, please, let's try to be using the microphone where possible. Whenever I'm projecting from my side, I'm not able to see the public chat coming from the students because I'm on a totally different window. But there's that way, I don't even understand this. There's that way where you link the master page with the web form. How does that work? Spiran, I don't understand this question. Are you able maybe to use your microphone maybe to clarify the question?
Excuse me.
Yes.
The platform we are using at some ways, I don't know, the updates are different from your side.
Okay, which one did you install?
Visual Studio 2019, which I
Community
think
edition, which one?
Community.
Yes. Did you install the community edition?
Yes.
And okay, what is the main problem?
trying to also even trying to get the master page.
Mm-hmm.
You need to. There is a page where you were to link the master page with the new page.
Yes.
Now the linking, it's
Yes.
not possible actually, and even trying to find the HTML part of it,
Yes.
it's not.
Okay. Is it possible maybe you share your screen? Maybe this is something we can look at as a class and see what could be the problem. Are you in a position to share your screen, Cyprian?
I'm not sure because I'm using two platforms at the same time.
Oh, I know you are on a Mac machine. Any other student could be having the challenge, because maybe unless I see what you could be facing, maybe it's very hard for me to give the solution. I know for sure if you have been able to install Visual Studio 2019, the community edition, which I do have, then you should not be having that unless you have created a different application. Did we create the actual application for Windows, sorry, for the ASP.NET?
Yes, I was using the same directions that were in the video.
So maybe today can we also start again? Maybe I show you how we do it again.
Yes, I think it will be better off.
Okay, it's okay. Maybe there could be a step maybe you are skipping, and as a result, maybe you are not able to link the application very well with the master page.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Brother Namu, I've seen you in the class. Am I right? Brother Namu. Braden.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay.
What are you doing in my class?
I applied for this unit.
But did you check your results?
I haven't checked in a while since last week on Thursday.
You passed the unit. You don't need to repeat the unit.
Oh, but already registered.
But now, all you want to upgrade the unit again?
Okay, since already registered, do I still continue?
Now
because I waited a long time for my marks.
But you know, the problem with the specials and the supplementaries, we are not the one keying these marks on the portal. That's why you find when the others are getting the marks, you also don't get them. And I think this one applies to all the students. The normal marks, we are the ones who are keying the marks in the system, but the other marks, the special marks and the supplementary exams are being keyed in the system by people from registry. Were you doing a special supplementary exam?
No, the last time I did it as a full unit when I talked to you about it
yes,
in August.
Namu, you can just come and see me today. I'm in the office. Okay, but for now, I think you can just exit the class, unless you want just to continue with the class.
I don't mind listening. At least I can learn something that I never learned before.
But you need to pay me some additional fee.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Let me leave.
No, I'm just kidding. If you still want to continue, it's okay. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. So we have said that the content placeholder will be able to allow us to be able to display information that will be very specific to that page, because the master page will be able to define some sections which cannot be edited. Once you edit the master page, then you find you want to add some content that will be very specific to that page, and that one can only be done by this particular control, which we are calling the content placeholder. I think maybe we shall do all once we create another application, we can also look at this maybe a bit more carefully. So any information that might be placed within this control, the content placeholder within the master page, will not be edited in other pages, and therefore the content placeholder should always be blank, because the content within the placeholder will be that content that will be displayed by the specific pages. So don't put anything within the content placeholder in the master page. Just leave it blank. I think this is what we have been working on. Let me just go through it very fast. So we have an exercise number 1. A master page cannot be viewed directly. It requires to be inherited by another page. As such, select the default.asp page. Click and delete that page. Anytime you add a new page, anytime you create a new application or a new web application, there's going to be the default.aspx. But in this exercise, we are assuming that this is the first time you are creating the application. So we are saying once you create the project, then you are supposed to delete the first default page. Then right-click on the name of your website in the Solution Explorer. Select on Add New. Then we are adding a new master page. Then we use the name, the default name, the master page master. Remember the other one, we had changed the name to the demo.master. But this one, it's an exercise to take you through what we did in the first class. Next, we make sure that we check this box, that we place the code in the separate file. And we have said the reason for that will allow us to be able to have the content and the code being done in a separate file, so that we can be able to have a clean application. So with your master page.master open in the source view, then you should be able to see the code for the master page for that page. And the only two things you'll be able to see at that point will be the active server page, the content placeholder. One will be in the head section, then the other one will be within the body. The most important thing will be the one that will be within the body, because the one within the body determines what we are going to be displaying on the respective pages. So you can be able to remove the one on the head section with the ID head, and that should be and then on the head section we should now be having the title alone. So we just continue. I think maybe because some of us, we have said we have a challenge, maybe creating the project from start. Maybe we shall take this exercise and do it as part of maybe seeing how do we create the project from start. So once we have been able to create the master page for the site, we also need to be able to add another page. So we now right-click on the new item, select the web form, and make sure that you select make sure that the place code in the separate file, and also select the master page. So this master page we are going to be selecting is the one which we have been able to add within our project. So we are supposed to be selecting the master page.master. So the other thing we are also going to be adding will be a style sheet. So you can give it the name stylesheet.css. While the master page will be in the design view, you are supposed to drag the style sheet from the Solution Explorer to the blank page. And this one will allow us to be able to link the style sheet to the master page. If the master page is in the source view, then we drag and drop it in the head section. This is what I want us to do, the exercise number 1. So that maybe those one could be having a problem creating the application from start, maybe it's much clearer what we need to do. So just allow me to start my Visual Studio, then we can proceed.
Mr. Kioko?
Yes, please.
A question?
Yes, please.
So you have said that the contents of the content placeholder control,
yes,
its contents is what will be shared across the child pages.
Okay, not exactly. the content placeholder will allow you to be able to add specific information once you edit the master page. If you don't have the content placeholder, then once you edit the master page, you are not able to add any content in the edited page. So actually the content placeholder will be acting as a container in the edited page so that we can now be able to add the specific controls in the new web application, sorry, in the new web page. I don't know whether that's much clear for you.
Okay, just
Yes.
a follow-up. So in the master page,
Yes.
you create that control and you leave it blank.
Yes.
Then going to the child page, you
Yes.
also create it. And
Actually,
when
in edited page, you don't create it. It's already there.
it's already there.
Yeah, it's going to be inherited with the other controls in the master page. And is that content placeholder that will now allow you to be able to add the content in the other inherited page.
Or within
Yes.
its tag.
Yes, but now the other sections cannot be edited from the inherited page. You can only be able to play around the content placeholder. That's where we are going to be adding our content in.
And in the content placeholder, you can add something like a body tag.
No, the content placeholder will be already within the body tag. But now on the content placeholder, that's where you can place something like a label, a text box, a button, and so on and so on to define how the user interface will look like.
Okay, and
Yes.
what is the significance of deleting the one at the head in the master page?
Okay. If you don't delete it, there's no problem, but it's just redundant. It's just redundant. It adds no value to the current application. You can either delete it or you can just leave it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, okay. So let me just share my screen. So the screen should be coming on. I want us to do a new one from start. So once you launch this, are we able to see the screen, class? Maybe before I proceed, I could just be presenting to myself. Are we able to see the startup page? Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. So on this page, that's where we click them. You have a number of options. You can clone a repo. You can also open a solution or a project. For example, if I have an existing project, I can be able to open it from this menu. I can also open a local folder, but this one, we want to create a new project. So let me click on create new project. So this one will take some time to load the templates. This one is a very heavy application. So up there, we can be able to filter. So C#. So I'm doing a Windows application and it's a web-based application. And actually, you'll be able to see a lot of options from the drop-down. This is where you now have to make the right decision. Either you are doing, an ASP.NET Core web application. So you select the first choice, then you click on next. Next, we give your application a name. So I want to give this application a name. So I'll just give it demo 2. And on the location, I want to save my application on the desktop. It's upon you to save wherever you want, either on the flash disk or on your local machine. So let me create a folder and call this one demo. So click next. Create. So just give it some time. So on this part, you can now select what you want, and we are going to be doing an empty application. So click on empty application, then create. You can either configure for them HTTPS in case you are going to be using the secure HTTP protocol. If you are not doing a secured application, you can just uncheck that. Then next you click on create. Then you give the application some time to create. This step always takes some time. So let's just give it some time to create, then we can now start working through the steps for exercise number 1. So depending on how fast your machine could be, then the application could, maybe you could create the application much faster. The fact that I'm running on a 4 GB laptop, maybe that's why you find the laptop or my machine, it's loading very slow. But let's give it time. I know at the end of the day, it's going to load. Sorry, what? Just a minute. I can see the window just disappeared, but let me share it again. So this is what you're going to see. This layout might always be different depending on how the layout looked like before you are able, before the last application you are creating. The first time it might look different, but since mine have been using the Visual Studio, then the layout for my Visual Studio might look different depending on how the components look like. Remember, you can be able to drag and drop the components from one part of the window to another part. So I want to look at, I want to activate, it's still loading. So let me activate the Solution Explorer. So there we are. So on the Solution Explorer, we click on the project. I can right click on the project, click on add, then we are adding a new item. Did we add the right thing? Just a minute. Just a minute. I don't think I picked the right file. Minutes. Just give me 1 minute, demo 2. Sorry, I think I gave you the wrong steps if I'm not wrong. So you come to File. Let's just do it again. I'm sorry for this. File, New, Project. We don't choose the first option. Please, when you are creating the application, there's an option that's written the ASP.NET Web Application.NET. Make sure that you select that. That one will allow us to create the ASP.NET Web Application Forms, the Model View Controllers, the Web APIs application, and many other features in ASP.NET. Then we click on Next. We give our application a name, demo3 or demo2. Let me just give it maybe class.
Mr. Kyoko,
Yes, please.
is it .NET Core or framework?
It's these things are so confusing, but let's just go back again. So it's actually .NET. It's ASP.NET Web Application, the .NET framework. I don't know. Do you see that option?
.NET framework.
Yeah, not the core, the .NET framework.
Okay.
Yes. Then click on next. We give it a name. Let's give it the name class. Then we select the location. I think the location is on the desktop on a folder we call the demo2. Then click on create. This one you select an empty application, but make sure that the features you're adding will be the web forms. Don't check the model view controllers. That's something you can be able also to look at. It's a very good way to program your web applications, whereby you can have the models. The models will be interacting with the database. We also have the views. The views will be like the HTML file. Then we have the controllers. The controllers will be the one that will be handling issues on routing. So we click on the web forms, then click on create. So we give the
Lisa,
project. Yes, please.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Sir, did you say .NET Framework or .NET Core?
.NET framework, Stacy.
And then after that, I can see options. There's empty, there's API, there's web application,
yes, you do
web
the
application model.
empty application. Then on the side, there's an option for the web forms.
Okay.
You see, do you see that, Stacy? Ambrose, I think the problem could be your machine because the others are able to see. Just try to refresh your machine from your end. Yeah. Ambrose, are you using a Pentium 1 machine? Or maybe it could be some connection on your side. So the application has started. Once the application starts, you'll be able to find a number of files on your application. Just a minute. So you'll be able to see a number of files. Number one is what we call them app.data. The app data folder, that's where we are going to be having the database in case we do have one. At this point, we have not done the database, but I'm very much optimistic that I'll be taking through the database and .NET applications towards the last two classes. We also do have the models. The models are the ones, or a model will allow you to be able to, or will allow you to be able to maybe make or write a code that you can be able maybe to query the database. But at this time, that's not what we are doing. If you look at the global.asax, if you open that file, just a minute, this file will be able to contain, the life cycle of your application. So you can be able to define a number of event handlers. For example, when your application starts, what happens? What code are we going to be executing? When the application may be shut down, what happens within your application? We also have the packages.config file. So this packages.config file, it's a file that will be used in case we want to deploy our application. This is where we are going to be doing our configurations. Then the web.config file, any kind of configuration that will be done for the current application will be done from the web.config file. For example, I might want maybe to change the language. For example, we can see the compiler in this case will be C#. the extension is a .cs. If let's say I'm using official basic application, then the extension will not be a .cs will not be a .cs extension, but rather that one will be a .vb extension. So most of the configurations, just like when you are working on an Android application, the configs will be done from the web.config file. So let me just go back to this page again. So I want us to maybe add I want us to add a web application, and what we are going to be adding will actually be a master page. So I right click my application, click on add. Just a minute. Then we are adding a new item. So there are a number of options. Class, are we able to see the options on the screen? When we click on add new item, do we see the option? Because that was not the case. Are we able to see this? Or there's a pop-up that has come on the window, the add new item, then dash class. Are we able to see that on our side? Because that was not the case when we are using the other platform. But I just want to confirm whether the Google Meet is able to give you that option. Can we confirm before we proceed? Okay, thank you. Thank you for confirming. I think then the Google Meet is much better than the one we are using. So this one will now do a web form with a master. So we click that and we give, sorry, is it this one? Just a minute. I wanted us to do a web form, a master page. Sorry. Sorry, I've seen it. So you'll be able to see a master, master form, web form master page. Yes, please. Yes, someone was on the mic.
Supreme. On creating the new project, at the templates, template option.
Yes. Supreme, I think you have a problem with your network.
Can you hear me?
Okay, can we just proceed with this one? Yes. Okay.
Yes, my network.
Yes, I've seen that. So we just proceed, then I can get the question at the end. Supreme. Okay. So on this one, we select, we want to add a web form master page. So you have to know exactly what page are you adding on your current web application. So we click on the web form master page and we give it a name. So let's just give it them class.master. Don't change the extension. You are all changing the name. Then you click on add. So let's just give it some time as the page will be added. So this is how the page will now look like. As I said, on the add section, you are going to be having a content placeholder. You can either have it or you can also delete it. This is just the pure HTML you guys are doing. You can be able to give that maybe a title. What is the name of my application? Maybe say this, the name of the application I'm creating will be a class web demo. That's what's going to appear on my web browser. Then within the body, as I said, you'll be able to find this one form, or there's a form tag, or there's a form control. The ID will be form 1. This one you can be able to change. If you want to give it another name, you are free to do that. This form will be running at the server. That means the content will be submitted to a certain server. And in this case, maybe we want to submit to the database. then we have been able to create a div. Within this div, we have a content placeholder. This content placeholder will be the one that will be able to appear once we edit this page. So let me just create another page. So we can go back to the, let's just go back to the Solution Explorer. Right click the name of the project again, then click on add. And we are adding a new item. So since this one, we are going to be adding a new web form. So we are going to be selecting, it's a web application. So let's select this option, a web form with a master page, because we want to be able to associate this particular web form with the master page we have just created. And this one we can call it, for example, default. Then click on add. Once you click on add, another pop-up will now appear. That pop-up will allow you to be able to select the master page you are going to be using. So we only have one master page within our current web application. So I click on the class.master, then click OK. On your code somewhere, you should be able to see the master file we are actually using, and you should be able to see the master file we are using will be the class.master. If you just go back to the design, let me switch to the design, you'll be able to see it's loading the master, but you'll get a content order. This is the content order that was defined within the master, because if you look at the master within the body, we do have a content place order that has been placed there. Once we edit once we edit the master page in a certain page, then we should be able to see that there's a certain content order that will allow us to be able to place the items within our web application. If I just navigate to the source, then you'll be able to see actually we do have some content order that has been placed within the head section. And we also do have another content place order that should be within the body. And all these components have been gotten from, have actually been gotten from the master page. But remember, you cannot be able to change the other parts. Once you try to change, you'll be able to see it's actually blocked. You'll just see that sign that this part cannot be changed, but you can be able to change this part. So if I look at the toolbox, let me just activate the toolbox. So toolbox should be down there. So let me just get a button and drag it on the form. You'll see that is possible. So I cannot be able to design my interface on my application. So I can also click a calendar and drop it on the form and so on. Whatever I want to place on my application, that one would be possible. But that one can only be placed within the content place order, because we said the content place order will allow us to be able to define content that will be specific to that particular page. If let's say I try to get maybe a button and place it within this part, then the application will not allow me to do that, because we said this part you cannot be able to edit unless you go back to your to your master page. That's why you can be able to make the changes. These parts, you can be able to define them. But now you cannot be able on the inherited page to make any change on this part of the master page. You can only make your changes within the content place order. Lastly, before we do a short break, I want to add a new item. It's not always a must that you add a new item from the Solution Explorer. You can also come to project, then you add a new item. And we want to add a style sheet. So let me just type style sheet. So we have a style sheet. Let me give it the name style.css, then click on add. So I'm adding a style sheet on my current page. So click on add. So if let's say I'm not very good at HTML programming and I want to be able to link this style.css file with my master page, I can open the master page. So I can open the master page in the design view, Then I drag and drop it there. If I look at the code, you'll be able to see that link or that style sheet has already been linked in your application without you writing any HTML code. That's one way. Or I can also remove this. When your application is open and you have the Solution Explorer open, so you can just drag this and drop it there. Then the style sheet will be added within your current page. So you can now define the style that will be applying within the current application. Class, are we together? Are we together, class? Okay, anything that's not clear up to that point? Anything that might not be clear? I'm happy that we are all responding that we are at the same page. And this one means that the class is progressing well from both my side and your side. Abigail.
So I have a question.
Yes, please.
Are we allowed to have several master pages? Because I thought you said it's a single page, and then when you were adding another page, you said you have to select which master page. So is it one or can they be many?
Okay, very good question. Yes, you can have more than one master page. Let's say you want maybe the index page to have a different layout, but you want, let's say, the login page to have a different layout and maybe the create account to have a different layout, then you can have as many master pages as possible. But the more you keep on having more master pages, the more it beats the logic of the master page. Because the master page should be one page that will be controlling the look and feel of the entire pages. But yes, you can have more than one master page, and you can be able to determine this page will be able to use this master page. Abigail, have I answered your question?
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Much welcome. Any other question before we do a short 10-minute break? Hope you are enjoying the class. Yes, please, Supren.
Excuse me, sir. The way you added
yes,
the project, there were different kinds
yes,
of templates. Which is the exact template? Which
so do I go back to the template?
Because on my side I couldn't see the way you
Okay,
added.
okay. Can I repeat the procedure again, so that maybe it's very clear to you?
Please do.
Okay. So you go to File, File New Project. Then you click on So this one you need. It's good that you filter. If you don't filter, you'll get so many options. If let's say I just say all the languages, because you can even be doing Python, you can do XAML application, Visual Basic. The applications are so many. So I want to do my application in C#. It's a Windows application. If you also don't do this, you'll get so many options. As I said, you can do the Android application. You can also do the Azure application, the iOS, Linux application, the TV, iOS, Windows, and Xbox. But I want to target the Windows. For the different applications, we can also be able to do gaming, IoT, and so on, even machine learning, the mobile applications, and so on and so on. But for this one, I'm doing a web application. Once you apply that filter, then you get a lot of options down there in terms of the templates. You choose this template we call the ASP.NET Web Application in brackets, the .NET framework, not the .core. I think that's all what you need to do. Then you click on this one. That is the ASP.NET Web Application, the .NET framework. Click on Next. Give the application an appropriate name. You also give it a location. Where do you want to save the application? Give a solution a name. But by default, the application will take the name of the application to be the default solution name. So this one, actually, you don't need to give it a name. Always tick this option that place the solution and the project in the same directory, then click on create, and that's done from your side. Supriyan.
Yes,
It's clear.
it's done.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think maybe in the notes I send you, there could be something that confused you guys. I need to look at whether I did the right screenshots. If they're not the right screenshots, I'd be able to change the notes again. Maybe the steps might be, those steps maybe they were not very clear from your side, and maybe that's what I'm going to be changing. So let's do a 10-minute break. We come back at 9:55. Can we continue with the class? Class, do we continue? I want us to be done by 10:30. Okay. So we have done exercise number 2. Sorry, we have done exercise number 1. I want us to proceed and do exercise number 2 together, so that maybe those who missed on something during the first class, they can be able to do a catch up with this exercise. So exercise 2 will be on creating the layout. So the master page will use the style sheet for the layout. The layout used for the website is made up of the header, footer, and navigation and content. And this is how our content looks like. At the top there, we have the header, and navigation, and followed, then content and the footer, and the footer. We are supposed to be adding some classes for the CSS, and I don't want us to type them from scratch. So let me just copy this and we take it to the CSS file. So I opened the CSS file we had just done. Just a minute. So paste. So that's how the CSS now looks like. We do have we are having a class selector, which is known as the container, with the width being 85 and the margin both top and bottom being 0 and left and right being auto. On the header we have nothing, on the footer we have nothing, on the content we have nothing. Let's just proceed with the exercise together. We also do have the navigation and the body. The body we don't have anything so far. So we have the navigation. Those are our main components within our header, within our CSS file. So we just proceed. So our master page, which we have added, we will require the layout to be set accordingly. So let's add the following section to the HTML code of the master between the form tag. So we do have, we have the container. The container will be housing all the other elements in the CSS. So in the header, we have a div that uses the class header. We also have the class we are calling, we also do have a class which we are calling, class navigation, then end of that class. Then we also have the class we are calling the contents. And within the contents, now this is where we are going to be placing our content place order, because that's where the individual pages will be adding their content. Then the end of the content, the class footer, then some text which is just written footer. This div at the end will be emptying our content container. So the container will be encapsulating all the other components within our application. So allow me just to copy this and have it within our master page. So let me just open the master page. Within the form, that's where we shall be having all this code. Just a minute. So the good thing with Visual Studio, it can be able to highlight to you that this one starts at that point and it's ending before when we close the form. That's where we have the header. That's where we have our navigation. That's where we are having the class we are calling the content. And the content will be having, the content class, that's where we shall be having our content place order, so that in the pages that we have been able to inherit, then we find the content place order that we can be able to customize the content for that page. Then we have the div for the footer, and the last one will now be closing the container. If we just save this and go back to the default, if I'm not wrong, then you'll be able to see something. You'll be able to see even though we have not written end code so far. Sorry. Let me just remove what we had added. So this is what you're going to notice. We already have them. Sorry, this one was not supposed to be there. And this one was not supposed to be there. So you'll notice that number one, we have the header, and we cannot be able to change this header at all. Next, we have the navigation, and we have the contents. After the content, we are having the content panel. On the content panel, that's the only place we can be able to make a change. And down there, we have a footer, which we cannot be able to change. We cannot be able to change the footer from all. We can be able to change these sections from the master page within our web application. And at this time, we can be able to confirm that our CSS is working on our master page. And the fact that we have been able to inherit the master page, that inheritance is also working. So we just proceed. So if, let's say, we just run the application, maybe maybe just for confirmation, let's just run this application and see what we get. We can use F5 to run the application. Then I'll share the screen and see what we have on our side. So I said the server takes a lot of time. This is something I've not been able to identify why that is the case. But once the server is up and running, then the application, you'll be able to run the application much faster. So let's give it some time to start, then we can be able to proceed. So this is what we are expecting to be seen: an header, a navigation, the contents, and the footer. It's really taking a lot of time, but let's just be patient as it comes on. This time that just been able to succeed. So let's give it time to come up on the web browser so that we can be able to see how the web page looks like. As I said, I have not known the reason why it takes that a long time, but I can be able to share the screen. I can see it's actually loading. So let me just present the new screen. So it's still loading. Either it could be my machine. I don't know. Those who have been maybe reviewing their web pages, do they take this long for them to be able to start? Or is it just my machine? Those who have been able to do some few basic web applications with ASP.NET, are we also facing the same problem with the server starting, or it's my machine? Okay, then it means I need to do something on this machine. Okay, I think it's up there. So we can see we have the header, we have the navigation, we have the contents, and we have the footer. Remember, we have just done the very basic styling. If I just look at the source, view the page source, then you'll be able to see this. But there are some items that are hidden. You cannot be able to see them. The ASP.NET, sorry, the active server page controls, you cannot be able to see them. The fact that they are going to be executed on the server side. So you won't be able to see those controls. If I click on the style, yes, I can confirm that's the style which I've actually added within my page. So we can just continue. So let's just continue with our discussion. So we can just confirm this is the screen we are getting. So on exercise number 3, we are creating the section. So this exercise is for the class demo, and therefore that should be the title on the header, along maybe with a suitable image or maybe a logo. So we can just look for a logo for the, maybe we can look for a suitable image for maybe for the organization we are creating. I've just used the theater log. On the website, I'm going to click on the Solution Explorer, create a new folder, and on that folder, that's where I'm going to be having all the images that will be used during the current application. Just before we move on, it's always a good thing when you are creating your application, you can be able to put all your images, all your resources in a single folder. Then we save the logo on that folder. Then if we just click to refresh the button, we should be able to make sure that that project is actually up to date. Then we can now be able to add the image within our application. So let's also try to do this. I think we still have a lot of time. We shall be able to finish the class by 10:30 without any delay. So in the header, so within my header, I'm going to put the following. So this is just a class demo. Sorry. So I can, it's just a paragraph, the normal HTML tag, P, a paragraph, a class demo. Right. So what else are we going to be adding? We also want to add a logo. So allow me just to download a logo somewhere.
Excuse me, sir.
Please. Oh, I'm not presenting, I've seen that.
So you're not
I've
presenting.
seen, yeah, that's what I've seen. Sorry for that. So we should be able to see my screen from your end. So I've just added a paragraph, or I can do it again. So I want to add a paragraph on the header. So P class, sorry. So I want to add a tag, and the tag will be as follows. Sorry, this tag will be class demo site. But we also want to add an image. So I need to be able to add a tag for the image. But before that, I need to download an image. Let me just look for a logo online, whichever it looks like, whichever maybe it looks like, just for demo purpose. So demo, so I can just get a logo, any just for this, or for this particular lesson. But I'm expecting that when you are going to be doing your project, then you get the real logo for your organization, or you are going to be creating a logo for your organization. So let me save one, then we can create a folder. Sorry. So call it logo. So on our project explorer, once I go to view Solution Explorer, it's a Solution Explorer, not a team viewer. So I can be able to add a folder, right click my project, click on add, and I'm adding a new folder. This folder, I call it images. That's where I shall have all my images in. Then I right click, then I right click that folder, then click on add. But I'm now going to be adding an existing item because I want to look for that image which I've just downloaded. New item. sorry, just a minute. Right click. So browse with. Give it some time, still loading.
Mr. Kyoko.
Yes, please.
So the content placeholder allows one to edit, to add your own, can I call it content,
Exactly.
even
Exactly.
while on a child page.
Exactly.
Now, adding that tag on the master page,
Yes.
and you navigate to the child page, you'll see like there are places where there's you're banned from editing.
Yes.
Then there's this one line where you can edit.
Yes.
So that is because we added the content placeholder
Yes.
in a div under the class contents.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I was thinking, like, can you add two placeholders? Maybe you want a custom footer and a custom body.
Yes.
For a child page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
okay.
it possible?
Yeah, okay. You can always play around the master page, but ideally, when you are creating the page, your website, the footer might not be changing. Your footer might be your footer might be just. It has to be unique all through the pages. So instead of defining a footer that looks different on the index page, then about us we have a different footer. That's why we are placing these components within the master page. But there's a lot you can be able to play around with. The content placeholder will allow you to be able to include that content, that which you want to be able to display on the inherited page alone. But most of the sections of the website, for example, the header, the navigation, the footer, and the rest, those sections might not be changing. So it's better you define them within the master page. But if there's something you want to be able to add which is custom, then you need a content placeholder, because the content placeholder will be the only control in ASP.NET that will allow you to be able to edit the other pages. I don't know whether Raphael have answered your question rightly as you had asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the ID.
Yes.
The ID, if you have two content placeholders,
yes,
the IDs should be unique in both.
yes, you know, the ID is like the name, so it has to be unique. You can't have the content placeholder or another control having the same name. It's just like the variables.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a minute. I'm trying to add the image. Okay, we do have the image on the images folder. So I'll just refresh this so that I can be able to update my web page. Sorry, I can be able to update my files. So once I go back to the design, the fact that I've been able to download the logo, I've been able to download the logo and I've added it in a folder which we are calling the images. If I go back to the design, I can actually, there's a control we call the images. So from the toolbox, let me just go back to the toolbox again. So there's a control which we call image. So I'll just drag and drop it on my web page. So add it there. So once I add the image, I can right click, then from the properties, decide which image will be showing on that image control. So there's a property we call the image control, which for now it's blank. Click on the three dots, then go to the images, which is the folder, and I'll see that on that one I have an image which is known as logo.php. Click on this one, then click OK. And that's how the image now looks like. You can be able to resize your image, and you can also be able to play around with your text. If I go to the default page that is using the master page, you should be able to see the logo should be having that. I think, yeah. So you should be able to see your logo. That is the logo of the organization. And we also do have a paragraph. Remember, for me, I'm not playing so much, or I'm not trying to go so much into depth with the appearance, but I'm expecting that if you are going to be doing a web application, if you are going to be doing a system, then the appearance will also be of importance to you. So we are able to see that for this case, on every page I'm going to be editing, we are going to be having the logo and the name of my company. So we can just proceed unless someone could be having a question. I think this is very clear how to insert the image. So let me share the screen, we proceed. Sorry. Kelvin, I'll try to upgrade the machine for sure. I've seen that my machine is actually very low, but I'm going to be upgrading the RAM. So I think this is what we have been able to do. If we just inspect the code, we should be able to find this tag has actually been added, and we should be able to see there's a certain image that has been inserted within our application. So we also set the header style so that it displays the text in them as bold and larger than default. Also, the text and the image will also be in the center. So we open this CSS file and have this code. This is where we are defining the font size. The font size should be 2EM. I think there's a way we do the conversion with that. So we also have the font weight. The font weight will be bold, meaning that the text within, the text within this element we are calling the header will appear in bold. So let me just copy this style sheet and have it within the header tag. The header selector, Maybe can I confirm, are we able to see the Visual Studio? Are we able to see the PDF currently? Do we see the Visual Studio? Do we see the PDF class? Someone just confirm, is it the PDF we are able to see, or is it the Visual Studio environment we are able to see?
The PDF.
Okay, then I need to stop sharing so that I can share the new one. So we go back to the Visual Studio again. On the style.css, on the header file, this a style we have been able to define, and we are saying on this one, text will be at the center, the font size will be 2EM, and the font weight will be in bold. This is just normal or symbol CSS which we have been doing in CMT 108 and also CMT 209. So I said that once I come to the master, you should be able to see that style has been able to apply, that the image has gone to the center, the header or the text of the center appears in bold. So that, and once we go to the default, the same will also apply. So the beauty with the master page, they are going to be making a change on one file, but that one change can be cascaded on all the other files that has been able to inherit that master. So we just proceed with so let me just proceed with the PDF so that we can be able to see what next we want to do. So we also want to define some navigations. So the navigation in most cases in CSS will be treated as the unordered list. So this particular HTML code will be able to generate for us an ordered list. So we don't need to write it from start. Let me just copy and paste it within the navigation section. So let me copy this and take it in this section, which we are calling the navigation. So I can stop presenting. So I'm going to open the master file and navigate to where we have the navigation. Actually, if you look at where we have the navigation, you'll just find it's totally empty. So this one is totally empty. So that's where we shall have this HTML code. That the ordered list will be in terms of the list. So maybe the first item will be this one can be about us. This one maybe can be FAQs, frequently asked questions, and this one can be a page where the customer can be able to reach us, contact us. Then I click on save. If I go back to the design of the master page, then you should be able to see this how my navigations look like. But we need to be able to define this one further. So we need to be able to add some style sheets so that they don't just appear like just normal ordered list. So all the navigation lists, all the unordered list within the navigation, the list style will be null. So we can go back to the style.css, and on this element we are calling navigation, we say, sorry, on this we say we add this other tag. Sorry, we add another selector dot navigation. So all the unordered list found within this class we are calling the navigation, then this style will apply. The list style will be none. So that means we shall not have the bullets at all. So let me save this. So once you go to the master, you'll be able to see that those style have actually now disappeared. We don't have any style. So we will also float the elements, the list items to the left. So let's also have the following on the style.css. So dot navigation. And list item in this one, sorry, the display will be blocked so that this item can be clicked upon. So the display for the list item will be blocked. We shall also float them to the left. Float to the left. Then lastly, for those items, we can say the width of each item will be maybe 150 pixels. So let's say the width of the list items found within the navigation will be, let's say, 100 pixels. Then I save this. Once I go to the master, that's how my navigation look like. If let's say I can be able to increase my style and say this one will be 200 and save, then you'll find that width will keep on increasing. If let's say I remove this style we are calling the block, let's comment this, put this one in a comment up to this, then you'll see the items will not be clickable. So I save this. So once I go to this, you'll see, yes, if let's say I run the application, these items will not be clickable. But up to this time, that's how the navigation looks like. If I go to the default page, then this is how my navigation now looks like. But I can be able to style this further. But for now, we leave it at that point. Any person could be having a question, class. I think we are doing pure all the basic HTML because our concern is not about CSS or HTML. Our main concern will be on how we can be able to do the logic. But for us, before we can do the logic, we also need to understand a bit of CSS and HTML. That's why I'm doing this symbol CSS file and HTML codes. So we move on. I think we are almost finishing. So because we don't want the list items to appear within the content, then this an item or this CSS style we call clear. So within the content, because we don't want the list items or the unordered list to appear, I'm going to clear both. So clear, then I say both. That means number one, we will not have the unordered list within the content section. If we don't clear both, the content within the, what we are going to be displaying within the content page will appear like an ordered list. And that's why in my case, I'm having the clear both element in CSS to be able to do away with that. So we can now went up on the footer. So on the footer, we just want to align the text at the center, number one. On the footer, we can also make maybe the text to appear relatively small than the others. So we can have this CSS code on the footer. So let me just have this CSS on the footer. We can have this style. The text align will be at the center, and actually we can just define the background so that we see whether this code is working. Background color. The background color in the footer, let's say it's going to be black. And the color of the text will be, let's say, a color like gold. Let's see what happens on the text we have on the footer. You should be able to see those changes have actually now appeared. And if, let's say, we want to increase the size of the footer, I can be able to increase this. I'm not very sure about the conversion, but let's say 2.8. It's much bigger than 0.8 EM. So you go to the footer, you'll see the text, it's actually enlarging. And that means our style sheets, which we have been able to hook on the master page, are actually working. So if we now run our site at this time, let's just see what we have so that we can be able to call it a day. So allow me to run the application so that we see what we could be having on the window. But if there are any questions at this moment, I can pick them because that's the end of that topic. I thought we will do more than this, but I think time has not been on our side. But what we have done, it's worth it, the time. I think there are a lot of questions on the master page, which we have been able to clarify during this class. So let me just share the screen. I don't know. It's still coming on. Still the problem of the laptop again. And actually, for now, that's what we are having. On the content, we have nothing. But next week, I'm going to be taking you through another sessions on the different controls on being supported by the ASP.NET. Those are the controls we are going to be placing on the content. So we shall keep on building on this site until the last day. So as far as what you have done is concerned, that's what you are going, or that's what you can be able to see. But remember, you can also be able to, use Bootstrap to make your application look more appealing. You can also use proper CSS. We have just done the basic CSS to make your site look more appealing. And at least we can be able to see what we are doing from our side. So class, I want to end the class there. Please let me get any questions, either concerning the class or concerning something that maybe might require my attention. Any questions, class?